Okay. So if you haven't tried, let us try this thing. Let us try solving this assignment. So what I'll do, I'm gonna create a class with the name calculator, right? And now it's not mandatory that every class should have a main method. It's only where we need to execute the code, we need to keep the main method over there. So I'm going to create a method with the return type as int, and this should get the sum, right? Two parameters, int num1 and int num2, right? And what I can do, I can create a local variable. I can say int result equal to num1 plus num2, and then I can print the I can return the result from here, right? Now this thing I can do it in a different way as well. Instead of storing it inside result, let's say if I create another method the same way, this should be for subtraction, right? And instead of doing it like this, I can even write num1 minus num2, right? And same thing, I'm gonna do it for uh, multiply and divide as well. So I'm gonna get the multiplication value, and this should be multiply, and this should be divide, right? So this is how we have created the entire calculator project. So now let's see how to call these values. I'll again go inside the class where we have a main method, and I'll just comment out these codes as well. Right. Now, in order to call these methods, I need to create an object of this class. I'll be saying calculator calc equal to new calculator, and with the reference, I'll say calc dot get sum, right? The very first method we're going to call get sum. Now it's mandatory that I should give arguments to these methods, right? Now there are two things. One are called as parameters, and the second one is called as arguments, right? When we are actually defining these things over here with the method, then we are calling them as a parameter. These are parameters. Parameters are generally defined whenever you are creating a method, right? These are parameters to this method, and whenever you call them, then we say that these are arguments. These are arguments that are basically passed to these parameters, right? So if I cannot pass any string value over here. These arguments should be of the same type which parameter we are actually calling over here. So if we are calling the integer parameter, the values should always be integer. So if I give 10 and 4, and what happens that this get some method, if you mouse over onto this, it accepts int num1 and int num2. So this 10 will actually going to go to the num1, and this will go to the num2. And when this method gets executed, it actually add these two values and store it over here. Then this method actually returns this result to us, right? Now if you want to execute this, if you run this right now, it will not going to show you anything, right? In order to get values from this method, either you need to store it inside a variable, but that will again be of a same data type. Let's say I write I equal to this. I still cannot store it inside string. Why? Because if I mouse over onto this method is basically returning us end. Right? If I just remove this, whatever this method returns us, this has to be stored inside the same data type only. And then if you want to print it, you can say the sum is and plus I. If you say this, if you run this, it will actually gonna print the sum, right? In the same way, you can call other methods. You can say calc dot get multiply. You can say 10 4 over here, and if you don't want to store them, you can directly print them as well, like this. And if you run this, it will gonna print it for you, right? Same thing, I'm gonna call other that is, instead of get multiply, I'll say get divide, right? And I'm gonna pass the same two numbers, and then one is get subtract, right? So I can call all the methods one by one. They are being called from the same reference, so only one object is created out of that class, and all the methods are being referred from the same object, right? Right. So whatever what we have seen so far is method arguments and method calling. So argument are the values which are passed during calling of a method. These arguments are stored in parameters of the method, right? So whatever that while we create a method, we give arguments. Those are basically not the arguments. Those are basically the parameters. So number of arguments must be equal to the number of parameters that we have actually provided to a method, right? So we can call a void method. If we directly call a void method, we need not to give we need not to give any return type to the method, right? Whatever that we have written inside that method, that will be executed. If we want to give a specific return type, we need to mention it as integer or a string, or then that method should return only that particular value according to the data type that we have defined. Then we can call a method with a single argument as well, and we can call a method with multiple arguments as well, right? Now, the next thing we'll be looking at are the predefined methods. Now, predefined methods are those methods which are already defined in Java, right? And are actually ready to use. You can directly call them and execute them. Either they are defined inside your Java library, or it can be inside a third-party library. If I talk about third-party library, it could be Selenium, it could be Appium, it could be any other third-party Java API, right? Which are already implemented. You need not to implement them again, right? You just need to call those methods, right? So we'll be talking about the predefined method. What are predefined methods? So we'll be looking at it in the next lecture, right? Because ultimately these tutorials are specially designed for a tester, and the tester job is not only to create methods, right? Because we are not developing anything, we are actually going to call the predefined method from a different APIs that we will be calling. Either you'll be working on Selenium, or either you'll be working on Appium, either you'll be working on any other Java API based on any REST SOAP protocol, right? So you need to know how to call those predefined methods, right? So that is what we're going to take a look in the next lecture.